Hi guys, and welcome to our discussion today on the School Voucher Program. Now, school vouchers are an awesome opportunity for students to make a choice on what educational system they would like to partake in and where they learn every day. And so it is a great opportunity for certain students, but it also has its drawbacks. Today we're going to do a little discussion on what some of those drawbacks might be. All right, so let's just dig in. Now, to get started, I really want you guys to have a really great understanding of the different school choice options. I found when doing my interviews for this project that there was some confusion on the different choices available. Now, school vouchers, what they do is they take public funding, and that funding will follow the student. It'll move into the private educational sector. School variances are a little different. They actually allow a student to still attend a public school, but it's a public school that is not zoned for them, that they're not zoned for. Variances are really good, but they are based off of student enrollment. So if you have a school that is already full, there is a chance that you would be denied your variance request and you'd still have to attend the school that you are zoned for. Now, charter schools are another great option, and they're not quite a voucher option because the schools aren't privatized. So charter schools are still regulated somewhat, a little bit loosely, by the Department of Education and the county school district that they fall under. So their plans and their educational performances are gauged and judged similar to a private educational system. Students at charter schools still have to take end of course exams. They still have to pass the same state tests that the public school students have to take. Charter schools also have to request and submit their educational plans to the local districts. So they don't just get to say, okay, this is what we're doing. They have to come up with a plan. They have to submit it to the local district, and the district has to approve that plan prior to them accepting students within the district. They do get funding from the public school system, but it's a little different because unlike a private system, which can kind of do whatever it wants, charter schools still have certain rules they have to be held to or regulated by. Now, which option is best for your student? Don't actually always know. So this really depends on the needs of the student. Some students do best in a private school, which might be created specifically for their needs. Other students are going to do just as good in the public educational system. Now, one of the bad parts of the private educational system is that it can deny your admittance. So just because you're choosing to submit an application to that private school of choice with your voucher, that does not necessarily mean that you get accepted. One of the downsides of that private educational system is that it definitely can deny admittance. So if you have a student that is ESOL or ELL or ESC or on the autism spectrum, or maybe doesn't get the best grades, that public school can say, unfortunately, we're not willing to open a spot to you. One of the downsides of the voucher system. Our next slide. Now for our next slide, I am going to go ahead and I want you guys to watch this video that the NPR discusses, or that the NPR has to discuss school vouchers.
School vouchers are a big, controversial idea that President Trump and Education Secretary Betsy DeVos both support. Some 15 states offer them, plus Washington, D.C., which has the only federally funded voucher program in the nation. A traditional voucher program lets parents choose where to spend some or all of the money a state would have spent on their child in a public school. That includes taking the money to a private school or even a private religious school. And that's why critics have argued that vouchers violate the Constitution's Establishment Clause, which says that Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of religion. But in 2002, in a 5-4 split, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that Ohio's voucher program was constitutional. The court held that the government was not choosing to spend state money in religious schools, parents were, and that made all the difference. Today, the majority of states still do not have voucher programs because their state constitutions have what are known as Blaine Amendments. These specifically prohibit the use of public dollars in private religious schools. Now, Blaine was a Republican lawmaker in the late 1800s who pushed this idea at the federal level. Now, he failed, but many states still went ahead and added the language to their state constitutions. Voucher programs vary a lot from state to state. They're generally limited to low and middle income students or students with disabilities. Ohio, for example, has a voucher dedicated exclusively to students on the autism spectrum. These programs often give students less money than the state would have spent in a public school. This is true in Indiana, which has the largest single statewide program in the country, now serving 34,000 students. Now, supporters of vouchers say they're a kind of social justice, giving low-income students access to schools they couldn't otherwise afford. Meanwhile, voucher critics argue that too often these programs divert public funds to private schools, and that in some programs, private schools are actually allowed to cherry-pick students, turning away low performers and even kids with disabilities. As for the research on vouchers, it's been mixed. There's limited evidence early on that some students benefited from a shift to private schools, but more recent studies of programs in Louisiana, Ohio, Washington, D.C., and Indianapolis have shown voucher students actually losing ground, in some cases significantly. One potential benefit of vouchers shows up in multiple studies. It's a slight improvement in the performance of nearby public school students. Though, of course, that only helps the kids who choose not to use vouchers. Our team at NPR Ed has spent the past few months looking into some of the nation's oldest and/or largest voucher programs. Be sure to check out our work at the link somewhere near my head right now.
So moving on, he did mention that the states are a little different on the voucher program. So the Florida's newest school voucher program was actually established during a 2019 legislative session, and it was created to enhance Florida's menu of education options. It's called the Family Empowerment Scholarship, and it's specifically for lower income students or students who are in foster care. And obviously students also do have to be school aged as well. That is one of the most important parts. But what this allows families to do is use scholarship funds to attend private schools selected by the parent. So the parent can pretty much use this family empowerment scholarship to go to any private school that they want to. Now, this does open up doors for many families. There are definitely some families that are not able to afford a private school education, and therefore their students have to go to a public school. But with that being said, public schools are growing and becoming stronger, and in my opinion, we should be infusing our public school system. Moving on. Now, the impact that the public educational system has, or that's caused, the impact on the educational system that's caused by school vouchers is quite a few different things. The money is taken out of the public educational system and injected into the private educational system, and this must be done at a balance, or the public system risks losing units or funding for their programs. The voucher program creates a loss of funding within our public educational system, which could weaken our public educational system. Public education, as you know, is the backbone of America, and while it is good to have school choice for certain students, it must be done in moderation. Most studies do show students do not perform any better by attending a private school, and sometimes in certain cases actually perform worse than if they had stayed at their zoned public school. There was recently a report that was co-authored by education researchers from the University of California, Berkeley, and the Pontificia Universidad Católica de Chile, and published by the National Education Policy Center. This report, in a nutshell, said that school choice is an appealing future for both middle class and disadvantaged parents, but the example of Chile shows that it has major drawbacks. In the end, choice forces both middle class and disadvantaged parents into an unwinnable race of competition for the highest possible social status, a race with both psychological and socially damaging consequences. Now, what if we spent the school voucher funds instead on creating a better educational system? What if that money was influxed into the public education system instead of getting outsourced to the private school system? What if we created the strongest public educational system that we have instead of moving that money into the privatization of schools? We need to support public education in every which way that we can and not defund it. I want to thank you guys so much for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed this quick discussion on public school vouchers, and I certainly hope to see you again.